Hello, my little loves. We are one more chapter of Saturday Stories from Wayside School left today, and then after this, we only have 3 more chapters after this one. This is chapter 27, and it is called Joy. There it is. Joy had forgotten her lunch at home. It was lunchtime, and she was hungry. She didn't have a meal ticket. If she had a meal ticket, she could ask for a lunch from Miss Mush, the lunch teacher. She'd have to be terribly hungry to eat a lunch made by Miss Mush. Even an empty brown paper sack would taste better, but that's how hungry Joy was. Damien hadn't forgotten his lunch. He had brought a lovely turkey sandwich, a big piece of chocolate cake, and a crisp red apple. All he needed was a glass of milk, and he could get that from Miss Mush. Miss Mush didn't know how to ruin milk. Damien left his lunch on his desk and went to the end of the milk line. Joy didn't waste any time. She reached into Damien's sack and took out the apple. But then she spotted the turkey sandwich, so she put the apple back and she took the sandwich, and then she noticed the chocolate cake. And she put back the sandwich and she took out the cake. And then Joy had second thoughts. She put back the cake and then she grabbed Damien's whole lunch. First she ate the sandwich and it was in a baggie, and when she finished the sandwich she pasted the baggie on Jackson's desk. Next she ate the chocolate cake and it was wrapped in wax paper, and she put the wax paper on Allison's desk. And she ate the apple last, and she placed the apple core on Dee Dee's desk, and she put the empty sack on Calvin's desk. Damien returned with the glass of milk. "Mrs. Jules, my lunch is gone," he called. "I wonder where it could be," said Mrs. Jules. "Calvin took it," said Joy. "There's an empty sack on his desk." "Good work, Joy," said Mrs. Jules. "Calvin, I'm ashamed of you." And she wrote Calvin's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. "Look, the baggie from Damien's turkey sandwich is on Jason's desk," Joy called. "Very good, Joy," said Mrs. Jules. "But how did you know Damien had a turkey sandwich?" "I'm just smart," said Joy. And Mrs. Jules wrote Jason's name on the blackboard under Calvin's. "And there's the wax paper from the delicious chocolate cake on Allison's desk," Joy announced. Joy had chocolate all around her lips. Allison stood firm. She looked into Mrs. Jules's eyes. "I didn't eat his cake." "But there's evidence there on your desk," said Mrs. Jules. "Joy spotted it." And she wrote Allison's name under Jason's. "Damien's apple core is on Dee Dee's desk," said Joy. "Very good, Joy," said Mrs. Jules, and she wrote Dee Dee's name under Allison's. "Damien, I think you ought to thank Joy," said Mrs. Jules. "She solved the mystery." "Thank you, Joy," said Damien. Just then, Louis, the art teacher, walked in. "I have your lunch, Joy," he said. "Your mother brought it. You left it at home." "You mean you didn't have a lunch?" asked Mrs. Jules. "You must be very hungry." "No," said Joy, "not really, and since Damien didn't get to eat, he can have it." "Oh, thanks a lot," said Damien. "You're the greatest." And he ate Joy's lunch, an old bologna sandwich and a dried-up carrot. "Joy, for being such a good detective and for being so generous with your lunch, you may help yourself to a Tootsie Roll Pop," said Mrs. Jules. "They are in the coffee can on top of my desk." Joy took one, and then, when Mrs. Jules wasn't looking, she took another. Calvin, Jason, Allison all had their names on the blackboard under the word discipline. But they were good the rest of the day, so at 2:00, Mrs. Jules erased them, and they forgot all about the whole thing. Damien had a lousy lunch instead of a great lunch, but 5 minutes later it didn't make any difference. He couldn't taste it anymore, and he was full. And he went outside to play basketball, and he forgot about the whole thing. And Joy had a great lunch, and 2 Tootsie Roll Pops. But 5 minutes later it didn't make any difference. She couldn't taste it anymore, and she was full. And at dinner time, she was hungry just the same. But a horrible thing happened. Joy couldn't forget about filching Damien's lunch. And for the rest of the year, every turkey sandwich, piece of chocolate cake, apple, and Tootsie Roll Pop tasted like Mrs. Mush's porridge. So that's the end of that chapter. You shouldn't steal from people, and you definitely, if you do steal from people, shouldn't blame it on other people. That is also very bad. So, that is all I have to say about that. And I love you very much, and